Good morning, everyone. It is great to see you. Happy Thanksgiving weekend to everyone. And I'm just thrilled that you chose to join us this morning. And if we've never met before, my name is Rex, and I serve as the campus pastor for our Racine campus here. And today we're doing a talk that's a little different. It doesn't quite fit into the rhythm of a normal teaching series. Last week we wrapped up our fall. It was like an 8 or 9 week long series called All Day, Every Day. And next week we will kick off our Christmas series. 4 weeks of a series called Unwrapping Christmas, which is going to be a lot of fun around here. So today is something we're just doing different. It's a one-time talk that we're just calling Espresso Shot. And the idea is to energize your faith today, give you some practical teaching. We thought long and hard about calling it Booster Shot, but then we were like, no, we don't want to trigger anyone. So we're not going to call it that. Let's stick with Espresso. Everyone can kind of relate to that a little better. And I can't think of a better place to start this morning than with the words of Jesus. And in particular, a point in time in his teaching that was so important and impactful 2,000 years ago that I also believe, fast forward to today, is very, very important for us as well. And it's found in John chapter 8. Where Jesus told the people who had faith in him, if you keep on obeying what I have said, you truly are my disciples. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Those are Jesus' words. If you know the truth will set you free. Now, have you ever believed something, specifically maybe when you were younger, that you were absolutely so convinced it was true, nothing could change your mind, right? Like there are the common things. So I'll give you 2 or 3 what I kind of feel are common things that people often believe that we're convinced are true, right? So one of them being told you have to wait 20 minutes after you eat before you go swimming, right? Do you remember that one? How many of you, maybe some of you still believe that? I got news for you. That's not true. That's an absolute myth. Right? You can gorge on that Chipotle burrito and then dive right into the pool. You're going to be just fine, okay? You're going to be just fine. That is not true. Or how many of you may have believed this? This was something that I believed as a child, that when you bought new shoes, they would make you run faster. Did anyone believe that? Anyone? Or am I the only one? Really? No, I'm the only one who could believe that? I believe that. I would run around showing my mom, like, look how much faster I run with these new shoes, right? And I've got news for you. If you believed that, or maybe you're a full-grown adult today and you still believe that, like you try on new shoes in Dick's Sporting Goods and you take a little sprint across the store, to show someone that you run faster, you don't have to do that anymore. You're free from that. You don't have to do that because it's not true. New shoes do not make you run faster. Or maybe you believed the old myth that if you eat watermelon seeds, that a watermelon would grow in your stomach, right? And how many times, oh my gosh, I just ate a seed, I'm in trouble, right? No, that's not going to happen. It's a total myth. Now, when I was a little boy, I had come across this crazy belief. I don't know where I got it, but it was there, and I was convinced it was absolutely true, that if I dug down into the ground deep enough, that I would eventually reach the devil. And then I got this into my mind that while I'm down there, I might as well kill him with my shovel, right? And I'll just save the world a whole lot of problems if I kill the devil. And so I could tell you multiple stories of times where I got in trouble with my dad because I would dig these huge holes in our backyard trying to get to the devil so I could kill him with my shovel. And I have proof of one picture. This is me and my sister right there. Look how dirty we are. We had been digging in the backyard, and look at that physique. Isn't that impressive, right? I hope that it's improved since then, but I'm not too sure actually. But I would dig these holes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to kill the devil. And then when I learned that this wasn't true, oh my gosh, the weight that was lifted from me. Do you know what kind of burden that is to carry when you're 8 years old, that you have to be responsible for killing the devil and save the world, right? My point in this is that when we believe something, we act as if it's true. Our beliefs impact our actions and the way we live. When we believe something, we act as if it's true. So you may have watched Jaws when you were younger, and you missed out on an entire summer of swimming because after watching that movie, you became convinced that the Root River was full of great white sharks, or North Beach down at Lake Michigan was full of sharks just waiting to pull you under and eat you, right? And you missed out on a whole summer of swimming. Then one day you realize that that's just not true. That's just not true. And you became free again to enjoy the beach, to enjoy the lakes, to enjoy the ocean or wherever you were swimming. Because there's an experience of freedom whenever we learn the truth about something that we had falsely believed. There's an experience of freedom when we learn the truth about those things. And so this principle doesn't just apply to these silly things that we believe when you're younger or maybe even today as adults. This applies directly to our faith and how we are learning to follow Jesus. And sometimes we need to look real closely at our faith. And we need to ask ourselves, are there beliefs I'm holding on to that need to be challenged and transformed? Are there beliefs that I'm holding on to that need to be challenged and not just stopping there, but they also need to be transformed? They need to be changed. And in my own life, I have had many times where I have found myself asking this question, and over time, the result has been challenging my belief, learning to transform that, and experiencing a newfound freedom in my faith. And so with that said, I want to share with you this morning 5 things that I no longer believe. And consequently, I want to share the truth about these things. And number 1, the first thing I no longer believe is that God's love is transactional. Now here's what I mean by this, and you see if it's familiar in your own life. My life's performance for God will ultimately determine my acceptance and approval from God. In other words, his love for me is based on how I act, and if I act good enough, then God will accept me and he will love me. That's living with this mindset that God's love is transactional. The truth, friends, is that God's love for you and for me has been eternally established. The Apostle Paul, who spent much of his life writing these letters to these early followers of Jesus, these first century believers, and what makes up so much of our New Testament, he writes to these people who were struggling with this concept that God's love was for everyone, that they don't have to earn it, they don't have to prove themselves to receive God's love. And this is what he says, and it's found in Ephesians chapter 3. May you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is. May you have the power to understand that God's love is not transactional. It's been eternally established for you. In fact, the psalmist, thousands of years before, we read in Psalm, says that God's love for us was established long before creation. And so if you look back on, let's just say this last week of your life, and you look back and you look at how you lived your life, no matter what you see, the good, the bad, the ups and downs, God's love for you did not change. In fact, you might have walked in here feeling like your life is just a hot mess full of mistakes and bad decisions and destructive behaviors. And I want you to know that God's love for you has never changed. His love for you has never changed. He has loved you and accepted you since the moment the creation was established. And so our being good or our being bad doesn't move God to move us, or doesn't move God to love us any more or any less. He does not love us based on how well we act or how well we behave. And so for some of you in here in this room, that you might be finding a newfound freedom today just in hearing that. That you can know today that you are loved and accepted by God no matter who you are or what you've done or what this last week looked like or what even this morning may have looked like in your life. The second thing that I no longer believe is this: I can live off the faith of others. Now, this is such a common and easy belief to carry with us in our thinking. And this is where we look at the faith of others around us, maybe a parent, a mom or a dad or a spouse, right? Or maybe even our pastor or just the people that we surround ourselves with at church when we come to church, the people we're sitting around here. And this is where we've convinced ourselves that these people can trust God enough for both of us. Why do I have to follow Jesus when my wife seems to be doing this really well? It doesn't hurt me. My life is pretty good because of her faith too. Or why do I have to pray about this really important need in my life when my pastor's told me he's praying for me, when I have friends who said they're praying for me, and I know my family has people who are praying for me? Why can't that be enough? Why can't I just lean on their prayers? Now, I want you to hear again more words from the Apostle Paul. This time, he's teaching a young man who is becoming a leader in the church, and his name was Timothy. And he wrote 2 letters to encourage and mentor Timothy. And this is what he wanted Timothy to understand about his own faith. It's found in 2 Timothy chapter 1. I remember your genuine faith, for you shared the faith that first filled your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. And I know that same faith continues strong in you. And when I read that scripture and I hear that, I am reminded of my grandfather, Grandpa Frank. Grandpa Frank was a man who spent his life working really, really hard. He worked for GE in Chicago and then got transferred out to Northern California, where he would spend the rest of his life raising his kid, my dad, and my uncles. And he worked really hard, and he loved people really, really well. And my Grandpa Frank was not the kind of man who would ever stand up on a stage and talk about the Bible and talk about God and all that kind of stuff. He wasn't an upfront leader. But he would show you who God was by the way he served people behind the scenes. He would show you who God was by the way he lived this disciplined spiritual life. He would spend hours sometimes daily praying. In fact, I remember being in middle school and seeing in their house this cheap old carpet that had been worn down in front of his recliner in the living room, because he would get up early and he would get on his knees and he would pray. To the point where after years and years of doing that, he had worn out the carpet there. Time to replace the carpet, Grandpa. And it was always easy for me when I was younger to look at the faith of these people. I was fortunate to have pastors and family who went to church, and they were generous with their finances, and they served people and all these things. And I would look at them, and it was really easy for me to believe that I could just ride the wake of their faith, and I am just fine. But here's the truth. The truth is, you can't borrow faith, but you can deposit it. You can't borrow faith from others, but you can deposit your faith into others. Now, my grandfather and the many other people that I had in my life, they were examples to me, and their faith had this way of trickling down into my life, making small deposits into my heart and into my mind. But there came a point in my life, and it was about the mid-20s, where I had to make this decision. I need to own my own faith. And I don't need to just own my own faith. It's time for me to develop my own faith. And the best part of that decision back then, of starting that journey of owning and developing my own faith, was the freedom that I then experienced in knowing that I was living my own faith. This was Rex's faith, not my grandfather's, not my mom's, not my youth pastor's. It was mine, and not a copy and paste version of someone else. And the great benefit of that was that over time, I've been able to see how God's used my faith to trickle down and make deposits into the life of others. When I learned that I can't borrow it from others, I have to make deposits. Number 3, the third thing I no longer believe. I no longer believe that God only pays attention to my spiritual life. And this is the false belief that tells us that God only cares about certain parts of our lives. The spiritual parts, like when you pray, or when you decide to spend a few minutes reading scripture, or you give money to the church for the Christmas offering, or whatever. It's in these moments that sometimes we think that God only pays attention. Like, oh, what's happening? Oh, look, he's praying. Oh, I'm delighted in that. Oh, she gave money to the church. Oh, I'm so pleased with her, right? Meanwhile, the rest of our lives, he's just not that into us. He only cares about these religious or spiritual things. And the truth is that God is captivated by every aspect of our life. In fact, King David wrote in Psalm 139, he wrote this, "Lord, you have examined me, and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I stand up. Even from far away, you comprehend my plans. You study my traveling and resting. You are thoroughly familiar with all my ways." The psalmist says, standing and sitting, traveling and resting. And you know what these sound like to me? These sound like the mundane, everyday kind of life things that I don't even give much thought to. But Scripture tells us that God is captivated by them. I mean, how often do you pay attention to the dozens of times, or maybe even 100 times a day, you sit and you stand, and you sit and you stand and you rest and you travel and you drive your car from here to there, and we do all these things that we don't give any thought to, but God is captivated by them. He's captivated when we're making dinner, when you're changing diapers, when you're on that first date, or when you're leading a team meeting in a conference room at work. All these things that we do day in and day out that we don't think about much, God is delighted in. The point here that I'm trying to make, friends, is this, that everything in our lives is spiritual. Everything, every thread of us is connected to God. And he cares 100% about every aspect of our lives because we're seen and known by him. And when we begin to have this belief that he is delighted in us and he is engaged in every part of our life, our faith becomes more real and it becomes more authentic. And whenever you have a more authentic faith, you have freedom. Freedom from trying to pretend that you have something, that you are something that you're not. The fourth thing I no longer believe. My unanswered prayers must be for a reason. This has been, oh my goodness, this has been a big one in my life. This has been one that if I'm honest, I continue to sort of struggle with, but I'm working really hard to no longer believe this, that my answered prayers must be for a reason. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You pray about something important in your life, or you're praying for another person who's really important in your life, something they're going through, and the prayer feels unanswered. And you wait, and you keep praying. And you wait even longer, and you start praying even harder. And yet nothing. Weeks or months, maybe even years have gone by, and you're left asking, God, what's the deal? Why won't you answer me? Oftentimes, when our frustration and disappointment with God collide, what happens in our minds is we begin to tell ourselves these lies that the reason these prayers or seem unanswered, it must be connected to something we've done. And it's really easy to go back into our past. It's really easy to look back at past failures, past shame, past mistakes, and we think, connecting the dots, that's why God must not be answering the prayers. And so we start telling ourselves these little things like this. You asked God to help you get sober before, and yet you relapsed. Why would God help you again? Or you asked God to heal your body last year, but you still don't take your health seriously. Why should God start taking it seriously? Don't you remember you asked God to bring a spouse into your life? How'd that first marriage work out? Why would God bring another person into your life? Didn't you ask God to provide for your family, to make ends meet, and yet you still don't manage your money well? Why should God provide for you again? As people, we are oftentimes really, really good at allowing our past to block our future growth in our faith. And the truth that I want to share with you is this. Answers to prayer are not based on our past, but they are to benefit your future. A scripture that was told to me often when I was young by my mom, if I had a life verse, this would probably be it. But it's prophet Jeremiah. And God speaks through Jeremiah to the people of Israel, and this is what he says to Jeremiah. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Friends, it took me years, and I still struggle with it at times, to believe that God cares more about my future than he does my past. And what happens in our past is real, and there are always real consequences to destructive behaviors and bad choices and things that we make, the failures that we have. There are oftentimes consequences that we can't escape. That's just part of being a human being. But God cares so much more about the life we're moving towards than he does the life we're moving away from. And there's freedom in this. Because every answer to prayer, whether we like the answer or not, and that's really important, that's kind of key to this, whether we like the answer or not, it is shaping our future. And as the weeks and months and years go by, we can look back and see God's faithfulness and how he protected and provided in ways that we didn't like or we didn't understand then, but now we can be grateful for. I could stand here for 20 minutes and tell you story after story of this prayer seemed unanswered. I got a no on this prayer, door closed, all these things that I was frustrated and angry and upset about, and oftentimes thinking like, oh, that's because of my past. Oh, it must be, here it is, my past is catching up to me again. God is punishing me for my past once again. But in reality, I can look back now and say, no, God was protecting and providing me and my family in ways that I didn't understand now, but it was for my growth, my future growth. And now I can stand here with gratitude that God was working behind the scenes in ways that I had no clue. Because our prayers are not based on our past, they're for our future growth. Lastly, number 5, might be the most important today. The 5th thing I no longer believe is this: I have all the time in the world to discover my God-given purpose. Have you ever been told, hey, you got your whole life ahead of you? Of course we have. Some of us we've heard that many times in our life, probably. It's usually from a teacher or a parent or someone who's in authority and they see us worrying or stressed about something in our future and they're just saying, hey, you got your whole life ahead of you. Don't worry about that. I find myself as a dad to teenagers now often saying to them like, hey, why are you worried about where you're going to live 10 years from now? You got your whole life in front of you, right? You got your whole life ahead of you. Don't worry about that now. But do you know what I do want them to think about in regards to their future? Their God-given purpose. As a father, I want my kids to discover their God-given purpose early in life, because purpose is what helps guide and navigate our life through all the ups and downs and all the possibilities and challenges. And what I used to believe, this lie I used to believe, is that I've got all the time in the world to figure out what my purpose is. Right now, I have a plan, and Rex's plan is this: make as much money as I can and spend it on stuff that makes me happy. That was my life plan, all right? That was a good plan, okay? And when I was 19 years old, I put that plan into effect, and this is the product of that plan, right? I bought my first brand new car, a Honda CRX. That thing was, I loved that car, all right? And I didn't just buy a brand new car, but I put $2,000 worth of subwoofers and amplifiers and equalizers into that thing so it sounded really good so that all of Tacoma, Washington could hear me when I'm coming down the road too, right? That was my life, and it was fun until it wasn't, because eventually I started to notice people around me who had something that I was realizing more and more that I don't have, and that was contentment, and that was joy, and it's mostly I didn't have purpose. I had no clue what my God-given purpose was in my life. And if this sounds at all familiar to you, I want you to listen to what our Bible says about our life and the time we have, because I don't want anyone to believe this lie that we have all the time in the world to find our God-given purpose. James was a real direct person, one of my favorite books in all of the Bible. Only 5 chapters, and it's extremely practical. Would really encourage you to read it. But he says this, you should know better than to say, today or tomorrow we will go to the city. We will do business there for a year and make lots of money. What do you know about tomorrow? How can you be so sure about your life? It is nothing more than a mist that appears only for a little while before it disappears. Now, friends, I'm not suggesting this morning that if you don't know your God-given purpose, it's because you're selfish and money hungry like I was. Sometimes we don't realize our purpose for several reasons. Reasons like maybe nobody called it out in us when we were younger. Maybe you didn't have a parent or a coach or a teacher or a pastor who said, you know what, I see something in you. You have something unique and special. And I want to help bring that out of you. Maybe you didn't have that. Or we fail to see the value of purpose because we look at our life and we say, hey, my life is really pretty good. What do I need to add purpose to it for? Or we're fearful of what finding our purpose might mean for us because we think that it's going to suddenly mean uprooting our life and some big drastic change, when the truth is, it often doesn't. We too easily find ourselves chasing after a life that produces temporary and meaningless outcomes. And I get it, it's hard not to, but here's the truth. Regardless of our age, today is a great day to start discovering our purpose and make an eternal difference with our lives. Today is a great day, if we've not yet discovered our God-given purpose, to find that and discover it and start on that journey so that we can make an eternal difference with our lives. Now, some of you may know, or maybe you're familiar with my friend DeAndre. DeAndre, I love this guy. We're getting closer and closer, and I just have so much respect for DeAndre. He's a lifelong resident of Racine. When he was younger, was caught up in a cycle of a lot of bad choices, and when his life lacked purpose and direction, he discovered pretty quickly that he could make a lot of money selling drugs in the city. And that ultimately landed him in federal prison for 9 years. And while he was serving his time, this changed his life. And while he was there, DeAndre became determined to know God's purpose for him because he knew that he wanted to rebuild in the city of Racine what he had torn down. And he spent the last few years since his release from prison building a nonprofit, something called the Main Project Cafe in Racine. And it's in the morning time, the first half of the day, it's just a coffee shop. It's a great place to go and work or meet with people. You can often find me down there, either working or hanging out with somebody or having coffee and hanging out. But in the afternoons, evenings, it serves as a mentoring place for young men who need direction and purpose in their life. He's giving back to these people. He's calling out purpose in young men throughout the city. And then they use their nonprofit to do all sorts of outreach to the community. And what makes DeAndre's life so inspiring to me is how he refused to believe this lie that it was too late for him to discover God's purpose. For him, it wasn't about connecting purpose to how do I pay the bills. It was about how do I make an eternal difference now in the city of Racine and in people's lives. And through that discovery came the Main Project Cafe and how he makes a living. But for DeAndre, prison helped him see that life, like James says, is a mist. James says, this is your life. You're here, and then you fade away quickly. It just disappears. We are a mist. And you might be thinking, hey, DeAndre's story is great, really inspiring, but I'm 65 years old and I don't really see the point in starting now and finding my identity or my purpose. And I say yes, because you have today, because today matters. And as long as you have today, there's an opportunity for you to discover your purpose and then eventually begin to make an eternal difference with your life. Or you might say, I look at what others have done in their lives and there's no way I can do that. I can't go build some. I don't have the skills or the resources to build a nonprofit like what DeAndre did. Friends, nothing will kill our purpose like comparison. God has uniquely gifted every single one of us to make an eternal difference in this world with our lives in our own way. And we can't afford to believe this lie that we have all the time in the world to discover our God-given purpose, because we don't. We are a mist. Today matters. Living with a sense of urgency matters. And friends, my heart today has been to stir our thinking and to cause us to look at some things that maybe we've believed and that simply aren't true, and challenge those things and then hopefully transform some of those beliefs. Because again, what we believe, we ultimately act upon. We act out what we believe, right? And so when Jesus says, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free, the truth he's referring to here is himself. This is not some random statement or a TED Talk statement. He is referring to himself as being the truth, the one who wants to set us free when we are willing to follow him. And we become free from wondering if God's love is truly unconditional. We become free from thinking that our past failures and mistakes now have to be our future identity. We become free from addictions, free from past hurts that constantly weigh us down each and every day. When we become free from believing that he doesn't care about our lives, he doesn't care about answering my prayers, he's just not interested in me, or he doesn't have a purpose for me. We become free from those lies. It's time to possibly challenge and transform some of our beliefs about God and ourselves. When I talk about Jesus this morning, being the truth, and how he invites us to follow him, and how he wants to give us freedom. Friends, you might be sitting here and thinking, I'm ready to make that choice. If you're in any way compelled for the first time to say yes to Jesus' grace, to say yes to his love, to say yes to his forgiveness, to say yes to following him and surrendering your life for his greater purpose and walking on that journey, I'm going to pray a little bit for everybody here. But if you're here today and you want to make that decision for the very first time, here's what I invite you to do. I invite you to take your connection card, write your name and your email, and there's a box right here that says, I'm making a decision to follow Jesus. Just check it. And later this week, I want to send you an email just to encourage you and celebrate that decision with you. And after the service, you can just drop it in one of the silver boxes. But friends, I promise you, it will be a decision that will set your life on a new course. And learning how to follow Jesus will bring a joy and a peace and a new life to you that, frankly, sometimes we don't know if we need, but I'm going to tell you, you need it. You need that. Let's pray. Jesus, I am so grateful for Great Lakes Church. Thank you for the mission you have us on. Thank you, Jesus, for your unending grace, your unconditional love for us. Thank you, God, for the purpose you have for us. Thank you, God, that you answer our prayers for our future growth, God, and you don't answer prayers based on our past mistakes. God, I pray that we would take some of these things, these challenges, and begin to challenge our own beliefs and desire to transform them so that we can be free today. Free to follow you, free to be free from religion and rules and all these things, and just free to follow you, Jesus. God, I just thank you for anyone here today who's making that decision to say yes to you for the first time. I celebrate with them. And I'm just so grateful for the stories that you're writing in people's hearts and lives in this church. In your name we pray. Amen.